For 8 years under Barack Obama, the Department of Justice was politicized and weaponized. When you came before this committee in your confirmation hearing, you promised things would be different. I asked you specifically, quote, will you commit to this committee that under your leadership, the Department of Justice will not target the political opponents of this administration? Here was your answer, quote, absolutely. It's totally inappropriate for the department to target any individual because of their politics or their position in a campaign. That was your promise just a few months ago. I'm sorry to say you have broken that promise. There is a difference between law and politics. And General Garland, you know the difference between law and politics. Law is based on facts. It is impartial. It is not used as a tool of political retribution. This memo was not law. This memo was politics. On Wednesday, September 29th, the National School Board Association wrote a letter to the president asking the president to use the Department of Justice to target parents that were upset at critical race theory, that were upset at mask mandates in schools, to target them as domestic terrorists. On the face of the letter was in repeated consultation with the White House, in explicit political consultation with the White House. That was on Wednesday, September 29th. 5 days later, on Monday, so right after the weekend, boom, you pop out a memo, giving them exactly what they want. Now, by the way, I understand that. In politics, that happens all the time. An important special interest wants something. Sir, yes, sir. We're going to listen to him. Let me ask you something, General Garland. In the letter, which you told the House of Representatives was the basis for this abusive memo targeting parents, how many incidents are cited in that memo?
I have to look back through the memo. I can't count it.
You don't know. How many of them were violent?
Again, the general report.
How many of them were violent? Do you know?
I don't know.
You don't know. And there's a reason you don't know. Because you didn't care, and nobody in your office cared to find out. I did a quick count just sitting here. During this hearing, I counted 20 incidents cited. Of the 20, 15 on their face are nonviolent. They involve things like insults. They involve a Nazi salute. That's one of the examples. My God, a parent did a Nazi salute at a school board because he thought the policies were oppressive. General Garland is doing a Nazi salute at an elected official. Is that protected by the First Amendment?
Yes, it is.
Okay. 15 of the 20 on the face of it are not violent. They're not threats of violence. They're parents who are unhappy. Yet, miraculously, when you write a memo, the opening line of your memo, in recent months, there has been a disturbing spike in harassment, intimidation, and threats of violence. You know what? You didn't look, and nobody on your staff looked. Did you even look up the 20 instances?
As I testified, the decision to make send a memo is for an assessment.
Did you look up the 20 instances?
I did not read.
Did anyone on your staff look them up?
I don't know the answer, but it's not
but of course you don't. In general, there's a reason. Look, you started your career as a law clerk to Justice Brennan. You've had many law clerks during the year, during your time as a judge. I was a clerk to Chief Justice Rehnquist. I'll tell you what, if I drafted an opinion for the Chief Justice and walked in and it said, there's a disturbing pattern of violence, well, Ted, how do you know that? Well, I got an amicus brief here who claims it. You would fire a law clerk who did that. You're the Attorney General of the United States. This was not a tweet you sent. This is a memo to the Federal Bureau of Investigations saying, go investigate parents as domestic terrorists.
That is not what the memo says at all. It does not.
Is it what the letter says?
That is not what.
Is it what the letter says?
I don't care what the letter says.
You don't care. You said it was the basis of your memo. You testified under oath before the House of Representatives. The letter was the basis of your memo. Now you don't care about the letter?
The letter and public reports of violence and threats of violence. My memo says nothing about domestic terrorism, says nothing about parents committing any such things. My memo is an attempt to get an assessment of whether there is a problem out there that the federal government needs to resolve.
The letter on its face says the actions of the parents could be the equivalent to a form of domestic terrorism.
And that is wrong.
And asks the president to use the Patriot Act in regards to domestic terrorism directed at parents. This was the basis of your memo.
My memo.
The Department of Justice, when you're directing the FBI to engage in law enforcement, you're not behaving as a political operative because a political ally of the president says, hey, go attack these parents because we don't like what they're saying. Department of Justice, you did no independent research on what was happening, did you?
The memo has nothing to do with partisan.
Did you do independent research?
The memo has.
Did you do independent research?
The memo has nothing to do.
Okay, you're not
with
answering that
politics.
question. You've testified you know nothing about the violent sexual assault that happened in Loudoun County, even though it's one of the bases in this letter.
I read about it since then.
Okay. You told the House last week you knew nothing about it.
Not know at the time. No.
Okay. This week, the court concluded that a 14-year-old girl was violently raped by a boy wearing a skirt in the girls' restroom. The school district covered it up, released the boy, sent him to another school where he violently raped another girl. The father, who Mr. Hawley just showed you, was the father of the first girl. He was understandably, do you understand why a parent would be upset when your daughter is raped at school, the school board covers it up, and then lies to you and claims there have been no assaults, we have no instances of assaults in our bathroom, and that was a flat-out lie, as the court concluded this week. Do you understand why the parent would be upset?
Absolutely, and any expressions of upset are completely protected by the First Amendment.
Except you just called him a domestic terrorist.
I never called him that. That's not correct.
This letter calls him a domestic terrorist. You based a direction to the FBI, an official direction from the Attorney General, on this letter, and I'll tell you what, the NSBA is so embarrassed of this letter, they've apologized for it and retracted it, but you don't apparently have the same willingness to apologize and retract what you did. Let me ask you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, the situation at our southern border is an unmitigated disaster, and I fear it's about to get a whole lot worse. With this administration's boneheaded decision to end enforcement of Title 42, you're essentially saying the COVID healthcare emergency is over. Come on in. While at the same time saying, nope, still got a COVID emergency, so we're going to force everybody to mask up on planes and buses and trains, whether you like it or not. Since he took office, President Biden has been busy reversing just about every one of the Trump administration's successful immigration policies, stopping construction of the border wall, ending catch and release, and practically abandoning border enforcement altogether, just to name a few of these misguided policies. The result, as I said, has been a complete and utter chaos at our southern border. Unfortunately, again, due to Biden administration policies, the chaos doesn't stop at the border. It's intentionally being spread all across the country. The Biden administration is putting illegal immigrants and asylum seekers on buses and planes at taxpayer expense, often in the middle of the night when it's not so obvious, and shipping them to communities all across the country. As a result, virtually every state in America is now directly impacted. Let's face it, we're all really border states now. Mr. Secretary, how many migrants have you shipped to Ohio, my state?
Congressman, I would disagree with the phrasing of your question, but I would be pleased to provide you with data with respect to the number of individuals.
Well, the question's pretty simple. How many have you shipped to Ohio?
As I mentioned, Congressman, as I was stating, I'd be pleased to provide you with data specific to Ohio subsequent to this hearing.
I assume your answer is here today, you don't know. Is that right?
I don't have the data with me,
okay.
Congressman.
I mean, because I certainly think the people of Ohio would like to know that, and in fact, I think it's their right to know how many migrants you're shipping to their state or by congressional district or others. After all, they're footing the bill for all of this, right? The American taxpayers?
Congressman, I'd like to again...
Are the American taxpayers paying for this stuff?
I would respectfully disagree with the phrasing of your question, but I think it's something very important to remember, which is individuals who are placed in immigration proceedings.
That's not the question I asked. I didn't. Please, we've only got 5 minutes each of us, so if you'll just answer the questions I've asked. You said, I can't tell you how many I've shipped to Ohio. I'll provide that down the road. Let's see if you actually do that. Now, the American taxpayers are footing the bill. The people that you're shipping across the country, they're being fed, right?
Congressman,
They're having their health care needs met. They're being housed somewhere.
If I
Their
may-
children are attending school, I assume. Who's paying for all that?
Congressman, you are mistaken in asserting in your question
That we're not feeding them? We're
individuals-
not housing them?
If
We're
I
not
may-
providing health care?
May I?
And it doesn't have to be paid for. I ask you, who's paying for this stuff?
Individuals in immigration proceedings are not entitled to the same benefits that United States citizens are.
I didn't say that. So, but they're not being fed? We're not feeding them?
Congressman, not to my knowledge do they receive
Okay,
public
thank
benefits.
you. So they're not being fed.
for food.
Okay. Let me ask you this. How many bus loads have you sent to my state, Ohio? Do you know that?
Congressman, as I stated previously, I will provide you with the data
Thank you.
you are
Okay,
requesting.
so how many and how many bus loads? Okay. Let me ask you this. If you don't have the numbers here today, who has these numbers?
Congressman, we in the Department of Homeland Security have a wealth of data, and I would be pleased to provide you with whatever data you request.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
One of the hallmarks of
Yeah.
our department is our openness and transparency, and in fact,
Thank
it's
you.
one of the priorities that I have established for this department for fiscal year 2022.
You've been extremely open, and we certainly appreciate that. Mr. Secretary, where does the buck really stop here? Who do we hold accountable for the chaos at our southern border? Is it you, the Secretary of Homeland Security? Is it the Vice President? Because President Biden, we know, supposedly put her in charge of the border. Or is it the big guy himself? Is it President Biden? Where does the buck really stop?
Congressman, I'm incredibly proud to work alongside the dedicated men and women of U.S. Customs and Border Protection, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and the entire Department of Homeland Security, who tirelessly dedicate themselves to the service of our country.
Thank you. We're proud of the folks that work there,
including the
too.
security
We
of
wish
the
you would
border.
support them, though. We really wish you support. They want to do their jobs. They want to secure the border. They want to uphold the law, and you took an oath to uphold the law. And right now, when you got 3 million people coming over here in a short period of time,
Time of the
you're not
gentleman has
enforcing the law.
expired.
Yield back.
For the purpose